Hello, everybody, and welcome to Life in Bold. This is a really, really exciting episode. I hope you don't click off. My name is Ben Hawes, and I'm so excited to share Kerstin Todd and our interview that we did today. Kerstin is a good friend of mine. We've been friends for like 8 or 10 years or something like that. And I always remember that back in the day, back when I was in college, I had this merchandise store online. And one of the things that I had on the store was this jersey, like a basketball jersey. And on the back, it said Ben Hawes Street Team. And Kerstin uniquely loved this Ben Hawes Street Team jersey, and she just kind of commented on it, and we just became friends. And basically I identified that she was the person that was on the Ben Hawes Street Team, and it was just really fun. And we've been friends for a while now. She is in HR. She actually works at Pixar, which I think is really cool. Today we talk about really finding your dream job. What does it mean to be a really great leader in 2023? And then also we talk about this idea of going on a journey to quit drinking, because that's something that Kerstin has done. That is something that she is currently doing. And she had a lot of insights and details to share with us about what it's like to go through a journey of quitting drinking. And I think it's universal to habits and goals and values and who you are as a person and what you want to achieve. And it was a really, really cool conversation. Kerstin is just a really, honestly, an amazing person. I love talking to her. She was just in New York a couple weeks ago, and we went to a really fun comedy show together. I had the idea to have her on the podcast. She said yes, and I just genuinely am excited for you all to hear this conversation. So without further ado, please welcome to this show, Kerstin Todd. This is Life in Bold. Let's do it. Hey, Kerstin, how are you?
Hi, Ben. I'm doing great. I'm feeling wonderful this morning.
I love what we're
So happy
wearing.
to be here talking with you.
Well, I'm honestly so happy to have you on Life in Bold, because you are one of the people in my life. I do think you live your life in bold. And so when we started to have conversations about you being on this show, I was like, absolutely, boxes checked. Let's get into it.
Absolutely. I think I even was like, when do I get to be on your podcast, Ben?
Yeah, and
Like,
we have
I
our
want to check that dream box of
mm-hmm,
mine. It's
mm-hmm.
I've so been admiring as a follower and a listener, and I was just like, I feel like these conversations are conversations that Ben and I have. We have such deep, meaningful, really exploratory conversations, and how fun would that be to be able to share that?
To share it with the world.
The world. Yeah.
Um, we've known each other for kind of a long time now. I think I must have met you close to 10 years ago. Would it have been 10 years
Probably.
ago?
I think so. I'm an honorary member of the original Ben Hawes Street Team.
So the Ben Hawes Street Team is something that we cannot do this interview without talking about, because
No, absolutely not.
back when I was in
It's my
college,
foundation.
it's the foundation of our friendship. Back when I was in
It
college,
is.
I had this merch store, and the merch store was all about Ben. It was like Ben Hawes this, Ben Hawes that. And I had some funny t-shirts and sweatshirts and stuff. Like my favorite said, it was a blue crew neck sweatshirt, and it just said, "Please don't tell my mom." And that is a funny sweatshirt. I honestly should bring it back. But
You
one of the
should.
items was a jersey, like a basketball jersey. And on the back, it said Ben Hawes Street Team. And you and our friend Stephanie were just really into that. So I kind of designated you and Stephanie as the Ben Hawes Street Team, and you still are.
Oh, always. I feel like it's a lifetime
Mm-hmm.
membership.
Mm-hmm.
Truly, truly. But
Yeah.
that was our beautiful beginning.
And now look at us. We are just here. We are thriving. We're on podcasts. We have dream jobs. We are having friends. We are kind of post-pandemic. We're kind of living it up.
We are bi-coastal.
You're in California. I'm in New
Yes.
York. Yeah.
Yes.
So there's something cool that I love about you. And it's not the most, to me, it's something that when I talk about you to my friends, I'm like, oh, she works at Pixar. That's so cool. And then when I actually am talking to you, we don't necessarily talk about that much, but you do work at Pixar. And I want to kind of dive into Pixar and you as a professional and how you feel, because I know that you feel like you're in a good place in your career. And I just want us
Yeah.
to really dive in to identify what are those factors when it comes to finding a dream job or being in a dream job. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to talk about that. And yes, that is where I work, but I think that we can talk a little bit more about like the journey and the waves of getting to any place in your life. But
Yeah.
I do feel that way. Yes, yes. I appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit more about that and more.
Yeah, totally. And I love the idea of making it applicable to people regardless of what their own dream job is, or what if they know that they have a dream job, or if they're still searching. Like I think there's some universality to like just talking about our own experiences, and to the point of this podcast, to talk about the bold changes that we've made in order
Mm.
to achieve things like getting a dream job, or achieve things like moving to a different career. Can you walk us through your career a little bit and how you've kind of ended up in this spot, and not in like
Yes.
a job interview way, but like as a person,
Yes.
Kerstin, what has your career experience been so far?
Yes. So I will catch all this to just say that I truly believe that life is like a process of elimination. Like it's
Mm,
easier to know what you don't want to do than what you do want to do. Some people, I think, kind of come into this world with a really strong sense of like, this is my purpose, and I'm going to be an engineer, or I'm going to be an attorney, or I'm going to identify with this profession that's going to have really kind of clear cut goals and
mhm.
steps for me to be able to get there. And I've just never been that way. I kind of have always had this sense of that I felt comfortable saying and identifying with of, I don't feel like I'm meant for a like 9 to 5 desk job
Mhm.
necessarily, which is hugely ironic because I technically have a 9 to 5 desk job, but I wouldn't really call it that, and that it's really much more than that. But I started off really in my entire life, like always performing. That was always a big part of my life. I've always considered myself as like more of an extroverted person. And my dad gave me some really good advice when I was young, which was that which makes you unique will ultimately make you successful. And I always had that kind of in my
Wow.
mind of like, right? It's like so good. It's so
That
good.
which,
I just
wait, say it again. That which makes you unique will make you
will make
successful.
you successful.
Hmm.
Yes, exactly, right? Like you have to have something that everybody else doesn't have.
Hmm.
And I really stuck to that, and I think that like my entire journey professionally in my life, personally in my life, has been trying to reckon with that and like how do I apply that to what I'm doing, how I'm showing up in my life, and how do I see myself. And so early on I thought I was going to be going into some form of the arts, some sort of performing. I love visual arts, I love theater, I love
Hmm.
acting, I love film. And that entertainment space was always really interesting to me, and a space that I was always really drawn to. Probably because of the people and the personalities, I think is really, really what makes it. But going through school and I didn't to date, my college education degree is nothing like on paper applicable to anything that I do professionally. I
What
think
was your
it's more
college
like
degree?
I have a Bachelor of Arts in American Studies,
Okay.
and I have a minor in education. So I thought I was going to go into being a teacher or originally I wanted to be on the stage. I wanted to go into acting, and I thought that was going to be a path. But I found that I didn't have a lot of confidence and didn't really know how to
Hmm.
pursue those things, and it all felt very big and intimidating. And I struggled a lot with my sense of enoughness to be able
Mm.
to move forward in that really boldly. So I went through school, and there were times in my, in my life that, in that particular time in my life, I was really thinking about like just needing to have a job, right? It
Hmm.
was like economic recession, really hard time to be finding a job. And I ended up landing in the recruiting space. And that was really transformative, just because of where I was and like the opportunities that I was exposed to really allowed me to kind of get exposed to all different areas of that in a really like unconventional setting.
Hmm.
So I just kind of went with recruiting. I got to talk to people all the time. I was great at it.
Hmm.
I've always had a sense of like, I don't want to go into sales. Everybody's always like, oh, sales, you'd be so good at sales. You could sell anything. And yeah, I'm sure I'm totally sure that I could. But it's not for me. I don't like the pressure of that. But recruitment in many ways is sales. You know, you're selling an intangible experience. And
Hmm.
to me, I got to connect with people in a meaningful way. And the impact that I made was immediate and sincere and meaningful.
Hmm.
And in many times, you know, I effectively felt like I was helping change and transform people's lives. So I realized that's the thing that I want to hang on to. Now, how do I keep doing that in my job? And through process of elimination, right? Like kind of being in tune to what do I feel like I need? How do I see myself? How do I reckon with that? Like, I need to be doing something where the things that make me unique are going to make me successful.
Hmm.
So what are those things, and where can I find places that are going to let me do that? And you know, many peaks and valleys in that journey, but here I am, here and now, and I feel like I'm really getting to fulfill that, and in a way that's just the tip of the iceberg, but it's all
Hmm.
very exciting.
And what is your current job? Like, what do you do today? And what
Yes.
do you feel are the kind of pros and cons, or what do you feel are the kind of, like you said, peaks and valleys? Like, what are the ins and outs of your job? Like, what do you like about it? And what is a challenge for you?
Yeah, I do love my job. I think what is my job? So I work on a people team in like the HR space. So my job right now is I am to put this as simply as possible because it can be a little confusing for people, but essentially my job is you may have heard of a role called an HR business partner before. That role is essentially to help advise leaders, in my role specifically, leaders and leadership teams on decisions that they're making that affect employee experience. So
Hmm.
it's a strategic role where I get to help people think through the decisions that they're making and how that's going to impact not only the people, but the bottom line in the business and how
Hmm.
they're trying to drive their goals and get there. Um, you know, you are who you hire, right? So your people are going to be your biggest asset. So how you navigate your business and the growth that you're trying to achieve is absolutely critical to be thinking about the people which you're relying on to do that. So
Hmm.
it's a really cool thing. I do a lot of coaching too,
Hmm.
leadership coaching, helping people just make decisions, be thoughtful, mindful, and how to just work better with one another.
I'm so happy you mentioned leadership and coaching, because this is something that I've always wanted to just sit down with you and talk about, because I view you as a leader in my life. There have been times in my life where I needed help and I would call you. I remember early on in my own career, I was doing customer experience at ClassPass, and I had this dream of kind of moving over to the HR team
Mm,
to build in learning and development and to really build out trainings and to connect with people on that level. You were very helpful for me in that way, because I think we had a couple of conversations, and over time you just kind of helped me understand, like, what does this even look like. And
mm.
now I see you being a leader in all areas of your life, but obviously you're helping leaders at Pixar, you're helping leaders, at your company understand what moves they want to make, what decisions they want to make. So in a way, I really want to pick your brain about, what do you think makes a good leader? So when we talk about that too, I want to hear your thoughts on what makes a
Yes.
good leader.
One of my favorite topics, Ben. And I would say that is the highest of compliments coming from you. Of course, we'll get into it, but I am a strong believer that leadership transcends any sort of job title,
Mm,
and it can come out in so many different ways. And I think it there is a direct tie to leadership and the person behind it all.
mhm.
And I so that just resonates with me, Ben. And I remember those times. That feels like it was yesterday, but also
It
so
does.
long ago.
Mhm.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome. So I think I actually just want to hear from you the idea of what do you think makes a good leader? What are the qualities
Mm.
of a person that sets them apart as a great leader versus a good leader?
I said that it's about the person that's kind of behind it all, right? And I strongly believe that a few really, really critical qualities in a good leader are resilience,
Mm-hmm.
Optimism, I think, is really, really important. Empathy and vulnerability. And I
Mm-hmm.
think vulnerability kind of goes hand in hand with this concept of courage. I think
Mm-hmm.
it does take a lot of courage to be vulnerable in terms of, kind of putting yourself out there. I'm thinking of in cases of, examples might be like your like Michelle Obamas of the
Mm-hmm.
world, or any person that's in a really kind of like public limelight. If someone is able to be their authentic selves,
Mm-hmm.
and show up in ways that they can really meaningfully connect with people and the people that they are leading or that they're around, I think that those are really strong leadership qualities that are really
Mm-hmm.
important, just as baseline, right?
Mm-hmm.
You could also call them personality traits or, kind of motivators. But I think that those traits that are really core to someone's personality are really important. And I think that's something that's kind of transforming in the world of discussing leadership as a concept. This comes up a lot in, you go to like conferences or like, listen to keynote speakers
Mm-hmm.
and on the concepts of leadership. And there's been a lot of, I think, especially post pandemic, I hate to say post pandemic because
What do we even
like
say? Like, what is
maybe
the
what does that even mean,
we're
right?
like kind of like,
Pre,
yeah,
current, post, wherever
it's
we
like,
are in the
it's like,
timeline of
it's like post
exactly.
the pandemic starting. And like,
Yes.
you know what I mean? Like, it's like, it's not post pandemic. Like, the pandemic is there, but
Yes.
it's like post pandemic, meaning like there was pre pandemic and post pandemic. The pandemic happened, like pre fracture, post fracture.
Yes, I think that's totally fair. Yes,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Thank you. Yes. Um, I'm kind of thinking of it in the sense of this like phenomenon that feels a bit like this like social experiment in a way, right? Like I'm fascinated by the ways that we are individually and then in a larger community coming back from the things that we've experienced. How are we dealing with our collective trauma?
Mhm.
What are the ways that we are valuing each other in ways that we weren't before? And I think this discussion of leadership has been really important through all this, right? Like I've always said, outside of like political affiliation here, like
Yeah.
I want a leader who, when the like proverbial, hits the fan, I want a person that's going to make the best decisions
Mhm.
with the people's best interests in mind, right? And
Mhm.
I think that that's come through. You can hear it in like Brene Brown talks a lot about vulnerability. It's
Mhm.
just a topic that I think has come up in less of a like self-help individualistic kind of framework and more of a like, this is what we need and values that we appreciate in leaders, whether it's professionally in our life or in world leaders, as
Mhm.
we're as humans trying to like navigate really challenging situations and life and death scenarios. I think that the vulnerability topic has really become really popular in talking about leadership, but I think for a good reason. I think we're recognizing that in a business sense, just to take it back to that,
Yeah.
empathetic leadership, what we call human leadership, is not only the right thing, I think, for like the people's experience, keep people engaged. There's all sorts of like science and metrics around
Mhm.
why that's good for the people, but it's also good for your bottom line. And I think the topic of like prioritizing human leadership as a business decision, I think is a really interesting conversation that we're kind of heading into.
Yeah. One thing, I think as you're talking, I'm thinking about how it relates to living your life in bold. And
Yes.
something that you've mentioned a few times between Michelle Obama and something that I think is true of you and Michelle Obama is this level of authenticity. And I think when I'm thinking through boldness and understanding what it means to be bold, I really feel like it starts with the understanding of how to be authentic. And I think
Mm.
that as leaders, you can sniff it out. You can sniff it out when somebody's not authentic or when their motivations are not right. And I would love to know from your perspective as a leader, like talking about your own self as a leader, has authenticity played a role in your ability to perform as a leader? We talk about the bottom line, or we talk about like the effectiveness of the decision making. Has authenticity played a role in that for you?
I think it's absolutely critical. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's probably the most important part um, of being able to form relationships and form trust, which is what's going to be the foundation of
Mm.
accomplishing all of those things. In my own personal sense, and using myself as an example, in my own personality, I believe to my core that I don't have a choice to be authentic or
Mm.
not. I have a very hard time being anything other than myself in any given moment. And I think that like navigating that professionally has been challenging. There were times that I was told, I don't think you're cut out for being in the HR space. I don't think you have a thick enough skin.
Mm-hmm.
And that was devastating at the time because, I was like
Ironically.
really, very, very, I was like, oh my gosh, like I need to harden up. I need to be what I'm not to be able to
Mm.
be successful. And through unraveling that over years of navigating that, and naturally bumping up against that and trying to fit into this box that I felt wasn't right in order to succeed, I realized how horribly wrong that person
Mm-hmm.
was. Like, I'm so sorry for this person. That's a very sad place to come from. But
Mm-hmm.
I realized it's actually quite the opposite. That in order to be successful in what I do, not knowing necessarily at that time what that was going to be, but if I was going to do something that I enjoyed, that I could spark joy in doing, I knew
Mm-hmm.
I had to be my authentic self because that's how I know how to be and what makes me happy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that was just a really critical learning moment for me that took me quite a long time to really realize about myself. But I cannot form the relationships that I need to form at
Mm-hmm.
work or in my personal life to be able to connect, to be able to influence, to be able to make an impact, and to be able to have the credibility. I have nothing if not my credibility in, especially in my work professionally,
Mm-hmm.
and being vulnerable and being authentic are absolutely important for people to believe what I'm saying when I say it, and to trust that when we're going through, because we do go through a lot of hard things together,
Mm-hmm.
that we're going to be able to do that, and they know me and they know where my intentions are coming from.
Yeah. I love this angle of like human leadership and being able to be empathetic and authentic. And something that I think about when I think about the listeners and what they'll get out of this conversation is there's a ton of people who are listening to this podcast who are leaders and consider themselves to be leaders at a company or as parents, or maybe they're the president of the United States. Who knows who listens to Life in Bold? But then there's other people who might consider themselves to be on the other side of leadership, where they are leaders in some ways, but they're more concerned about how to handle managing up or leading up to people who are leading them. And I think in the very like specific situation of a manager and a direct report at work, do you have any tips for the direct report on leading up and setting themselves up for a success in a relationship with a manager or leader who might not have that humanness to them?
Yes, definitely. That I think that's probably more often the case than not.
Hmm.
I think getting paired, especially in a like a work setting, with a leader who is going to be that person who's asking you the right questions, who really is showing their intentions in the right way. Like, you struck gold. That's a great situation to be in.
Yeah.
In those cases, that's not. I think it's important to really understand the dynamics of the relationship that you're in. And I think like this is for your partner at home. This is
Hmm.
for, you mentioned parents, shout out to all the parents in the world. Like, I'm not personally a
Roommates.
parent. I have a cat and I'm a proud cat mom, but no, I am not formally a parent. There are, in any case, it's managing a relationship,
Hmm.
and it's a two-way street. But in a work setting with the dynamic I'll say for in these terms, a manager and a direct report, it's
Hmm.
really important, I think, to understand the dynamics of that relationship in one, understanding yourself, knowing what your needs are, and being able to communicate that, I think, is really important. And then also recognizing that you're not going to be able to control how other people respond. So you're
Hmm.
in control of yourself. you can communicate what your goals are, what you're looking for, how you want to engage with that person. I think asking for permission to be able to engage in hard topics or feedback, or, you know, when the things get tough that you're
Mm-hmm.
scared about interacting with this person about, how can you kind of ask yourself, how can you kind of set that up by maybe, you know, knowing how that person will want to interact with you on any given topic. But I think more than anything, what it really comes down to is knowing that person's intentions. So if you're
Mm.
working with someone that, you know, maybe you're not sure why they make the decisions that they make, or what's going on kind of behind the scenes or at home, you know, you may not know much about them. I think that the root of a lot of conflict that I see in the world, at home, in the workplace, comes from either misinterpreting,
Mm.
misunderstanding, or just not knowing what someone else's intentions are, and assuming that they're something
Mm.
that they're not. So in any partnership, in any relationship, it's a two-way street. And I believe, you know, you have to have a situation where in a healthy partnership, one party believes that the other person
Mm.
has the other person's best intentions in mind, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't have that, can you ask the questions to be able to understand where someone is coming from? Can you not assume that someone's coming from a place of negative intentions, and suss that out a little bit? But if you're in a position where someone is, you know, does have bad intentions, like we want to assume the best about people, but in many cases it's not. And I think you have to know when to exit. Relationships can be toxic, and
Mm-hmm.
you have to, I think, really be able to understand yourself, know what's important to you, what are your values that you're willing to be flexible with versus, you know, in the spirit of growth and
Mm-hmm.
learning, versus something that you're feeling is really not right. And I think at the end of the day, the best advice I can give to anyone is trust your gut. If it's not working for you, then get the hell out of there and move on. Life's too short.
Go to HR.
Go to HR. Don't be scared of HR.
What I'm
Don't be
hearing,
scared of HR.
what I'm hearing are a lot of elements of boldness, almost like if you were to list out those words you just said, like communication, clarity, intentions, all of these things align with understanding how, you know, if something's out of whack, something's out of whack, that's the word I'm choosing to use, and you have the
I love that
tools
word.
to be able to diagnose what's wrong, to really communicate with somebody with what your intentions are, and then to really come up with a solution on, am I going to get out of this, am I going to work on fixing this? I think that process is something that is bold, being able to identify that something is wrong and then move through the process of either fixing it or realizing that it's toxic and getting out. I think is, as I'm on this journey of understanding how to live my life in bold, I think that is something that I'm going to put into my little journal of, like, when something's not right, like, how do you actually go about it? So I really appreciate your, like, explanation of that. And you are the queen of segues, actually, because you're talking
Oh,
about boundaries and intentions and communication. And something that I have admired about you is your journey with quitting drinking. And so
ah,
I would love to talk about that, because I think that as I was thinking through your journey with this, like, it is something that I think is rooted in boldness and rooted in authenticity. And so if you're open to it, I would love to chat about this journey that you've been on.
yes, I would love to. And Ben, you know this, but for all of the Life in Bold listeners that do not know this, I am an open book. So I love talking about all these
Yeah.
topics. And I just want to say, Ben, that I think you're right on with how you're kind of tying all these things we've been talking
Mm.
about as back to boldness. To me, I think it just comes down to like courage.
Mm.
And the topic of vulnerability. To be vulnerable is it takes courage, and to be
Mm-hmm.
authentic, it takes courage. And I think if I was going to distill what
Mm.
boldness looks like for me in my own life, in my own career, how I bring that into all those different parts and aspects of my life, it is courage.
Mm.
And I think those things are really kind of interchangeable for me. So I love being able to bring in this next topic because it's one so personal to me. And like I said, I'm an open book, and I love being able to talk about this with anybody who's willing to listen. So thank you for listening to all the listeners.
Yes, all the listeners out there.
Yes. But I think you're right. I think there is an element of boldness and courage specifically in this particular topic.
Yeah. So do you want to start by sharing with us, kind of like you shared with us your career story? Do you want to start by sharing with us your relationship with something like alcohol and the story of making the decision to not drink anymore? Is that a good place to start? Okay.
Yeah, I would love to start there. It's so funny because I've been doing a lot of, I think if you make a decision to do or not to do something, there's a lot of like soul searching that goes into that. And for me, I feel like I'm still in it. I'm still like, I feel like I've had a couple of these really profound moments in my life around this particular decision. But I feel like I'm not even there yet in terms of really understanding the full depth of that. But I will share what I know so far. And I am growing and learning, just as I am in all other parts of my life. And I will say this is a decision that I made for myself, and it's not the right decision for every person. I think it is a really personal decision. But the kind of journey of me getting to there has been one where I think it's important to share that I am type 1 diabetic, and that kind of part of my identity is one that is permanent, and as I've always seen as a permanent part of myself, and a really hard thing for me to kind of detach from myself, as it has influenced me to the core. I was diagnosed when I was 13, and that kind of life event, let alone the trauma of being diagnosed with something chronic at a really young and critical age, will have a really significant impact on someone's life. But I do think that early on in that moment, I had a reckoning of what it means to have good health. And I've kind of reckoned with that over time, and really kind of approached health and wellness through being really into different areas of fitness in different parts of my life. But I had always been, like I mentioned earlier, very extroverted, very social. And so I was always the person going to the parties, having a good time. And, alcohol, I think, in our lives just is this thing that's always there, and it's always a part of every social setting. And naturally, just growing up, even in my own family, like big wine family, big food family, big loud family, we love all of those things, and especially all together, it gets even more fun. So I think like my personality, I was always drawn to social scenarios in which alcohol was always a big part of the setting, part of the how you feel included in those settings. And, I just could, honestly, if you had asked me 3 years ago if I would ever be in a position where I'd be giving up alcohol, I would say, you have lost your mind, Ben Hawes, because I would never have done it. I couldn't imagine trying to get through the social situations in my life without being able to actively participate in drinking. So that's just kind of like the context and where I was coming from. And coming through, lockdown and COVID, and, I think we've all done a good amount of kind of self-reflection, whether it's professionally about our jobs and where are we, what are we looking for in life, what's meaningful. I feel like I've really been on this journey to be in pursuit of myself, my best self. And I think it's a part of, at this point in my life, I feel the most confident I've ever felt. I feel like I have access to, I am incredibly privileged, just to call that out and recognize it. I feel like I have access to resources and support and friends and family and community, and those things that are really important to me, that I hold very close to me, which are really critical in being able to, for my own personal journey, make it through to the point that I have. But in my pursuit of trying to be my best self, especially over the last few years, I really started taking my health very seriously. For anyone who has not dealt with a chronic life-altering disorder before, like like diabetes, it is a really hard thing to reckon with in your life, and that there are times of burnout, there are times of success, there's wins, there's failures, and there's a lot of fear. And I just had this kind of, I felt like a very grown-up moment of like, I really need to take care of myself. I really need to take care of myself. You know, life is too short, and I don't have any reason to try and make it shorter. So there was a lot of, I think, like health aspect of that decision for me. But I think the soul searching that I've been doing kind of through the process that I'm in right now is really wanting to not just like be in pursuit and find that best version of myself, but I really want to know her, and I really want to believe in her. And I think that by making this decision, I was able to confidently and boldly say, I can do that. And I did that thing. I did that super hard thing that I said I was never going to be able to do. And I think that it's important that I be able to model that for myself. And I hope that there are spaces and places that maybe give permission for other people, regardless of the choices you're making or the journey that you're on, to be able to really boldly, confidently realize that you can do that really hard thing. And I think that's been a really profound kind of part of my journey. The other thing of it, I think, is that I was really, the hesitancy around giving up alcohol, and the way I identified alcohol too is really honestly coming out of COVID. I think in my own social circles, it was like either you're drinking a lot during the pandemic or you're not at all. And I think that like I am in a great relationship with my partner, Alex. He's wonderful. And we just found a lot of joy in doing exercises together around just like finding spaces for us to be well, whether that's like our mental health or our physical health, whatever. We live in this very small little apartment here for a couple of years together. So we were like, maybe not intentionally saying we're not drinking, but we tended to just drink less. And then I found less of a need for that in my life. Then as things started opening up and, people were getting back together, I found myself just going back to my old habits, but I felt that I wasn't reacting to alcohol in the same way that I was before. I will tend to, if I'm at a party, carry around a drink with me, and out of this just kind of habit, just drink it without being intentional about what I'm drinking. And I just noticed that I had a tendency to just keep on drinking when I started. And I think that maybe is something that many people can relate to. But to me, I realized that was causing more harm in my own personal health. It caused a lot of issues. Just, having one weekend where that might have been a situation where maybe a holiday party or whatever, and had more to drink than I wanted to, or, even if not, just maybe even having like a drink or two, I realized I did not feel well. And at where I am in my life and my age and, taking care of myself, I realized this is an active choice that I really need to be making differently. And I've realized the value in making that decision at this point has been in just, I feel like a better person. I feel better on the inside, and I'm able to show up better on the outside because of it. So that's been just kind of my journey up to this point. And who knows where it'll take me.
I really relate to this story because the thing that I relate to is how the pandemic changed things for people. We did do reflecting, and our bodies changed. Like everybody's bodies changed in the pandemic somehow, whatever way, like
for better or for worse.
Yeah, right. And like we spent so much time at home, we spent so much time indoors, and I think that just changes so much about your values, honestly. Like I feel like it changes more about who you want to be and how you want to spend your time. And I really feel that, for me, I am not somebody who feels like I need to give up drinking, because I really feel like I do it so rarely, or so I do it so minimally. But for me, it's more about things like fast food and like just ordering McDonald's and impulsively being like, oh, I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I'm stressed. Like, let me order Taco Bell like to my door. And for me, like that has been something that it has felt more on the edge of being some kind of maybe addiction or something like that, where it feels like it's a values thing, and it feels like it's like I have to boldly make the decision to like take care of my body and to, understand that if I want to have this future that I dream of, it's going to require me to eat more vegetables. And I think something, that's different about our stories and our challenges is with me, a lot of my challenge is when I'm alone. And for you, I imagine a lot of the challenge would be when you go to a party or when you go to a restaurant or when you're
Yes.
in a situation where maybe other people are drinking and you're choosing not to, or when you're in a situation where like there's peer pressure. And it's interesting to think about peer
Mhm.
pressure like in our 30s, because to me, peer pressure seems like something that in fourth grade, like a fifth grader offers me a cigarette. Like, but like, but as adults, there is peer pressure, and especially with drinking, because for some reason, people have it in their mind that if I'm drinking, you need to drink too, or else it's not fun for me to drink. And I think it's an interesting thing that you're probably navigating all the time. And I'd love to know your perspective on really setting the boundaries, on communicating that you're not drinking. Something I'm curious about is like, so you show up to a party and you've made the decision internally to not drink. Like, do you
Yeah.
walk in and say, "Hey, everybody, I'm not drinking tonight, just so you know, don't bug me about it"? Do you grab a Sprite, and, put some grenadine in it, and so it looks like you're drinking? Like, what is your approach to setting the boundaries and then to communicating with people when you're
Yes.
choosing to not drink?
Yes, first of all, man, I love the imagery of the like fifth grader giving the fourth grader a cigarette. I feel like this is so indicative of just our generation of like impact of like DARE program,
Yes.
like this is your brain on drugs, Ben.
Yeah.
So I love that image. That's hilarious and an iconic image.
I mean, I
um,
really just feel like when I was in third grade or fourth grade, like I really was in fear of fifth graders because I thought they were going to come
oh
up.
yeah.
And I remember one time in high school, I never actually drank in high school, weirdly enough, because I was worried. I was worried that if I drank, I would accidentally come out of the closet as gay. And so I never drank in high school. And I
Wow.
remember one time I was at a party or something like that. And this guy asked me if I want to drink, and I was like, no. And I felt so,
Absolutely not.
you know what I mean? I was
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
I was like, no, thank you. I'm good. And it's just
Oh
so
yeah.
funny. And I think not to totally derail us from the drinking conversation, but I have a lot to say about saying no to drugs. And I just think that
Yes.
like there's so many cooler ways to say no to drugs than to just say no. Like
Oh
if
yeah.
somebody's offering you drugs, like, and you say no, like that's kind
I
of
have a
lame. Yeah.
moral high ground and you're not on it, Ben. Like no, no, sir.
Yeah. So taking like that, like, what do you do when it comes to being at a party? And so if someone says, "Hey, do you
uh
want this margarita?" Like, what do you say? What do you do?
yes. Yeah. No, I think that's so funny. And that is an exact example of what has happened to me. But rather
Mm,
than I declare bankruptcy,
yeah.
like that's not quite the angle. I'm not walking into the room with a sign on me, right?
Hmm.
Um the well, let me say first that I think this thing that you touched on just now, which was like the like I'm going to choose not to drink, or I'm going to choose to drink because that's going to affect the
Mm,
dynamic between myself and another person who is drinking, those inner dynamics, right? Which is, I think we're trying to control the situation, control how other people feel, control how other people are feeling about us. Like, am I
mm,
gonna be
mm,
othered? Am I gonna fit in? Am I gonna miss out on something?
mm,
And I think it all comes down to this fear of loss. Quick little example. What was it, last year? I hosted my sister's bachelorette party in Austin, Texas, and
hmm.
boy was it fun. All of our college friends all got together. Any of them listening, hi friends, love you guys so much. XOXO. Love you guys. But I realized going through that experience without drinking,
Mm,
I had this like grand aha moment, this like one of those things that just is really profound that stuck with me, which was I didn't lose out on anything. I got to experience everything that everybody else in the room was experiencing. And when it turns out everybody else was drinking, no one really cared if I was drinking or not, because I was there, I was showing
Mm-hmm.
up, and I was myself. Personally, myself though, like surprise, surprise, I am outgoing,
Mm-hmm.
like I'm a loud person. I'm the For all the listeners, you can't see but if you're watching this, I speak with my hands. I'm out there. And I feel like I don't really need the alcohol to
Mm-hmm.
get me there.
You don't
I'm
need
already there.
alcohol to make you fun.
Yes, I'm already very fun. I don't need
Yeah.
help making friends. I don't need, don't need help having fun.
And by the way,
And
I'm probably more fun than you. I'm
oh,
more fun with
absolutely.
you without
Yes. Oh,
alcohol
you
than
are.
you are with alcohol. Not, no,
Yeah,
I'm not more fun than you.
verified.
I'm just saying in this example,
Oh no,
Ben
but
is
I
not
think
more
you are
fun than
more fun than
Chris.
me.
No, but I just wanted it to be known that I was not saying that I'm more fun than Kirsten. I was saying in this situation where like we're at a bachelorette party, like
Yes.
I feel like in situations where people are pressuring me to drink, I'm actually probably better off. If you want me to be fun, sometimes I feel like I'm better off not drinking and just having fun and being really present and being really aware
Yes.
than if I drink too much and then I'm fun for an hour or two and then I'm like passed out. Like that's not,
Yeah, totally.
you know what I mean?
Totally. Totally. I know exactly what you mean, and that resonates with me like on a very deep and real level.
Yeah.
Um I think that in the scenario where I'm coming into the room and I'm being offered a margarita,
Mm-hmm.
thank you, thanks so much, no thanks, is
Mm-hmm.
what I say. And in most cases I have found, and I don't know if it's because I'm in the Bay Area here, like there's a lot of like acceptance around just like people making different choices in terms of like, what's your poison of choice, what do you like to do, like how do you show up in social situations. And I think that just to speak to my own personal lived experience, that's where I am. And where the situations that I'm in, I think are kind of like safe spaces to me in the community
Mm-hmm.
that I'm in. So I just want to throw that out there, that like that is like
Mm-hmm.
where I'm coming from here. And I recognize not everybody may necessarily be in that same situation. It may be a different set of challenging things that you're up against in those scenarios. But for myself personally, I found a lot of success with just no thanks. Now. At the very beginning, it was like, wait, you're not drinking? Or, oh, you're still doing that thing? And because when I first started, I didn't declare, I'm going to stop drinking. It
Oh.
was an evolution of like, oh, I've been doing this for like a few weeks. Now I'm going to do it for a few months. And then I was like, wait a minute. It was at
Mm-hmm.
that bachelorette party. I was like, I'm doing this for good. This is a good thing for me. And so I think in the beginning I felt like I needed to show up with an explanation,
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, I was also really afraid that people were gonna be like, oh, Kirsten has a problem, or like, oh, there's got to be a deeper reason here, or as someone that identifies as like as a woman. I think that anybody who is also in that space may also understand, like, you're not drinking, you get asked, oh, are you
Oh.
pregnant, like,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what
Uh,
I hate that. Leave me
yeah.
alone, leave me alone. um but it didn't start out as easy, but I think it was because I was really afraid of the questions that I might get asked, and would I be
Mm-hmm.
able to show up with an answer that was good enough for whoever I
Mm-hmm.
was talking to. And then I realized, screw that, I don't have to have an answer that's good enough. I just have to have whatever it is that's going to make me comfortable enough in my own skin to be able to show up in those scenarios. So in the beginning, I did feel like I kind of explained to people like micro versions of what we've talked about here within my friends and family, and
Mm-hmm.
really want to get them to understand that this is the life choice that I'm making and why. And I wanted to communicate,
Mm-hmm.
right? So people know where I'm coming from, what my intentions are, and maybe what I'm not, or where I'm not coming from. And that's kind of how that boundary setting started.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that in any case, boundary setting, whether it's because of a life choice you're making that's different and you're trying to navigate that change, I think it's communication is really important, and having a support network, right? So like my friends, my partner
Mm-hmm.
Alex, my family, they're all extremely supportive now. Now I walk into the room and I was at a party last night, and one of my girlfriends bought a bunch of like non-alcoholic beers and drinks and things, and I was just
Mm-hmm.
like, wow, that's so inclusive. But when I asked her about it, she wasn't just necessarily like, oh, I knew you were coming. She's like, oh, in case there's people, that might
Mm-hmm.
not want to drink. And I was like,
Yeah.
wow, like good for you. Good for you. I'm glad that you're thinking about that.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, it's not the decision that's for everybody, but it was the right decision for me. And I think being able to successfully communicate to the people around that I'm around, and then also realize that I don't owe anybody anything. I don't
Mm-hmm.
owe anybody an explanation as to why I'm making this choice for myself. And like, what is the quick little one-liner thing of why why I'm not drinking when I get asked? If I can just have a little something that I
Mm-hmm.
share with people and have that ready on deck, and I can just let it go, then people are like, oh, great. Um,
Yeah.
and so sometimes I just say, oh, for health reasons. And then I don't usually get a lot of follow-up questions
Yeah.
after that. So, so that's kind of been my hot tip. But
Right.
I do love carrying a drink. To me, it's more of like I've got my emotional support water bottle here, right? So a little, yes, exactly, right? So always got a little drink with me, and I find that in social situations, it is nice to have something to sip on. So I will
Mm-hmm.
carry around my little like seltzer water. I love making the mocktails.
Mm-hmm.
Mocktails are super fun. So it's been kind of fun leaning into it now and making it a fun thing. And
Mm-hmm.
I tend to bring my own whatever in scenarios where it's like a BYOB situation. So there's ways I think to kind of like fall into the comfort eventually, but I do
Mm-hmm.
think in being intentional about how you're communicating and really understanding what you're comfortable sharing with other people. I don't think that you necessarily need to share your entire life story. Here I
Mm-hmm.
am on the Life and Bold telling my life story.
Telling your life
Um,
story.
but I
Yeah.
don't think you need to feel like you owe that to every person who might ask,
Yeah.
right?
I think what you're speaking to is a little bit of self-worth too. Like you
Oh,
don't need
totally.
to
Yeah.
explain it to somebody else because it's not their business and you stand boldly in what you know is right for you.
That's
And I
right.
think that that's really truly what this show is all about. What I'm on my own journey to do is really just understand, like, who am I? What are my values? What do I want to be? How do I stand boldly in that? And then something that I've really been thinking about lately when it comes to boldness is how do I choose challenge as I
Mm,
move forward? It might not be the easiest thing to say, I'm going to stop drinking, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that. But the boldness comes in when you're saying, I know this is going to be hard or challenging, and I'm going to do it anyway because it ties back to who I am as a person. And I really
mm.
have been exploring that topic a little bit as someone who's looking to kind of really relate to people on that bold level. And I think it's really cool how you're talking about, that self-worth and knowing that you don't owe anybody an explanation. And if you want to give people a small explanation, you can, but it's just not up to them to make you feel a certain way because you're
That's
not
exactly
drinking.
right. Ah,
So
Ben, preach, preach. That's
we,
that's exactly right. You totally hit the nail on the head. I think
yeah.
that's so right. I think there's this sense of really understanding your own values,
Hmm.
not because it's like a nice thing you like to have on the wall of your house because it's a nice sentiment, but how do things make you feel?
Hmm.
Tap into that,
Hmm.
pursue that, understand that about yourself. And I think that will be really important to any person in as you're growing and discovering yourself, making life decisions, whether it's that pursuit of that dream job that we were talking about,
Hmm.
really understanding and knowing what are the things that are going to bring you joy, what are the things that make you unique, what are those
Hmm.
things that are going to be adding to your life and your experience, which is very short. Our lives are
Hmm.
very short on the grand scale of the universe. And pursuing those things at all times and not losing sight of that. I think that's
Hmm.
got to be your North Star.
Hmm.
And I think it's absolutely true in all parts of your life.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming on to Life and Bold. I think people got a lot out of this, just talking about dream jobs, talking about leadership, talking about choices to take care of your health, and you know, the challenge of choosing to not drink and setting boundaries. I think this has been a great episode of Life in Bold, and I really appreciate, Kerstin, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing all of this with us and being vulnerable and being this human leader that you talk about. Where can people support you? How can they find you if they want to help you in any way? Like, what can they do?
Thank you, Ben. I'm on all the socials. I'm at Kerkalerk. It's Kerkalerk.
Mhm.
Otherwise, find me, connect. I am an open book. I love to talk to people. If
Mhm.
people have questions about, any of the kind of themes or topics we've talked today, I love engaging on these
Mhm.
topics. It's been such a privilege to be on the show to talk about living boldly. That is just like one of the core tenets of my life is the
Mhm.
boldness of it all. And why live your life if you won't go forward boldly? And so I love talking about this stuff. I think everything we talked about, I could go into a million different segments over for 5 different hours. Maybe we'll have another follow-up conversation sometime. But for anybody who's listening that wants to engage and talk, please reach out. I'd love to connect and hear your stories and form more meaningful connections.
Mhm. And if you're following me and you're not following Kerstin yet, do go follow her. She's a great follow, honestly, very fun to watch. And if
Ben.
you are following Kerstin and you're not following me yet, or the podcast, you can follow the podcast on all platforms at Life in Bold Pod. You can follow me, Ben Hawes, at Ben Hawes Show on Instagram and TikTok. And really, you know, as we kind of enter this new year, 2023, I really, again, just want to say how much I appreciate you, how much I appreciate everybody for being here on this journey of figuring out how do we live authentically, how do we choose courage and challenge, and how do we live our lives in bold. So it is so meaningful to me when people listen to the podcast, and I hope you have a great day, an even better week, and do not forget to live your life in bold.
In bold.
See you later, everybody. See you next time. Bye, Kerstin.
Bye.